Good evening and welcome to the Cable Company. This is the fact sheet by NASA, and I want to dedicate this to all the Rocketeers out there and to Bob and Tony Revels for their contributing to the Apollo mission, and to my girl, Lisa Ann Ringer Moak. She was an organ donor and didn't want to be. So that's we got robotics. We don't need to steal people's organs. That's what this is all about. Vote Lisa's grandbaby law, and you don't have to worry about them stealing your organs. Why? This right here. Why? Fact sheet. Why spacecraft stay up? It's pretty interesting too. Y'all might want to listen to this. The basic laws governing satellites and other spacecraft are fascinating in their own right. And while they have been well known to scientists ever since the time of Sir Isaac Newton, the 17th century English scientist, they may still seem a little puzzling and unreal to many of us. Our children, however, will understand them quite well. In fact, some of them do so already, to our occasional embarrassment. It is difficult for those of us who are now the older generation to appreciate why an object having no wings or other visible means of support, and not even particularly streamlined, as we accept the term, can perform the way it does. All of us know that Sir Isaac Newton discovered the laws of gravity, and if we were asked what causes a stone dropped from our hand to fall to the ground, we would unhesitatingly say gravity, although we might not be sure exactly what that is. We also know that the harder you throw a stone away from you, the farther it will travel before falling to the ground. For a short while, its speed and direction are sufficient to overcome the force of gravity. If you could imagine your strength so fantastically multiplied that you could throw a stone at 15,000 miles per hour, it would travel a great distance. It would, in fact, easily cross the Atlantic Ocean before the Earth's gravity pulled it down. Now imagine being able to throw the stone just a little bit faster, say about 18,000 miles per hour. What would happen then? The stone would again cross the ocean, but this time it would travel much farther than it did before. It would travel so far that it would overshoot the Earth, so to speak, and keep falling until it was back to where it started. Its horizontal speed would tend to keep it moving straight ahead. The attraction of the Earth's gravity would try to make it fall to the ground. The interaction of these two forces would nearly balance each other. From the stone's point of view, it is continuously falling, except that its very slight downward exactly matches the curvature of the Earth. Since its imaginary example, there is no atmospheric resistance to slow the stone down. It would still be traveling at its original speed, 18,000 miles an hour. When it got back to its starting point, so around the Earth it goes again. It will stay aloft, or as the scientists would say, in orbit, indefinitely. Here then are the first two requirements for placing a spacecraft in orbit. It must be raised to a speed of approximately 18,000 miles per hour. It must be placed in a horizontal flight path relative to the place from which it is started. Since the Earth has an atmosphere, of course, neither stones nor spacecraft can be sent whizzing around the Earth at treetop level without encountering considerable resistance or drag from the atmosphere. Should sufficient power be used to force an object into orbital path close to the surface of the Earth, the friction caused by overcoming this drag would generate a great deal of heat, enough in fact to completely burn up most known materials. The third requirement, therefore, for placing a spacecraft in orbit is that it must be lifted beyond the reach of atmospheric resistance. In its absence of atmospheric resistance, plus speed and flight direction. That makes this type of space flight possible. Such a spacecraft rotating in orbital flight around the Earth is called a satellite, the term used in astronometry for any attendant body revolving about a larger one. It may seem odd that weight and size, mass, has nothing to do with maintaining a satellite's orbit. If a feather were released from a 10-ton satellite, the two would stay together, following the same path in the airless void. There is, however, no clear-cut line making the upper limits of the atmosphere. Even a few hundred miles above the Earth, some slight vestige of atmosphere remains, and its resistance will eventually cause the feather to spiral inward towards the Earth sooner than the satellite. It is atmospheric resistance, however slight, that has set limits of the life of most satellites launched to date. Beyond a few hundred miles, the remaining trace of atmosphere fades away so rapidly that higher satellites should stay aloft thousands of years and perhaps indefinitely. The higher the satellite, incidentally, the less speed it needs to stay in orbit once it gets there. Thus, the Earth's largest satellite, the Moon, has an orbital speed of only a little more than 2,000 miles per hour. But to launch a satellite toward a more distant orbit requires a higher initial speed and greater expenditure of energy. In practice, a satellite does not maintain a flight path that is always equally distant from the Earth's surface. Even minute variation between planned and actual speed and flight direction will affect the orbital path. Once the rocket engines of the launch vehicle has given the satellite its initial speed ceased functioning, the satellite is coasting, just as the stone once it leaves the thrower's hand. The resistance of the last vestige of atmosphere, however slight, and the attraction of the Earth's gravity causes the satellite to slow down until it rises to no higher and begins to fall back towards the Earth. This point at which the satellite's flight path is at the farthest distance away from Earth is called the apogee. When the satellite begins to fall back towards the Earth, the attraction of the Earth's gravity causes it to increase its speed until it once more is traveling slightly above the ideal orbital speed and the arc of the flight path is slightly less than the Earth's curvature. This point, where the path of the satellite is closest to the Earth, is known as perigee. The increased speed causes the satellite to once more head away from the Earth until it is again slowed down and begins to fall back. This sequence is repeated again and again, each time at a speed a little slower than the time before, and each time a little bit closer to the Earth, until finally the resistance of the atmosphere becomes great enough to slow the satellite to a point where it can no longer maintain orbit. And that's one of the fact sheets there. Okay, and I thought that was pretty interesting. This one here is this is Launch Complex 34. I don't know if you can see that or not, but this is Launch Complex 34, and this is the launch. Alright, director. Alright, this is our director. Fact sheet, Launch Complex 34. The first Saturn vehicle was successfully launched in October 1961 from a massive launching site at Cape Canaveral known as Launch Complex 34 LC-34. It is the largest known launching site in the world and is the first built expressly for the peaceful exploration of space. The main features of the LC-34 are the launch pedestal, umbilical tower, a blockhouse, and propellant facilities. The launch pedestal consists of a large steel and concrete platform from which the space vehicle is launched. It is constructed of heavily compacted soil and is equipped with a huge flame deflector. Erected next to the pedestal, the umbilical tower maintains the link between the space vehicle and ground equipment up to shortly after the first motion of liftoff. The launch service tower is used to assemble, service, and shelter the space vehicle. After its job is completed, it is moved by its own power approximately 600 feet away on rails This is the minimum distance necessary to protect the service tower from the explosive power of the vehicle propellant should an explosion occur at launch time. The blockhouse, the Launch Control Center, and its complex nerve center that contains the equipment required to check out and launch the space vehicle. The fueling facility consists of propellant storage tanks and pipes connecting these tanks to the pedestal. The camera station noted on the accompanying diagram are used for automated remote photographic coverage of launch operations. That was a fact sheet. A bunch of fact sheets here. Let's see. This one here is Mercury Spacecraft Center, and that's a fact sheet right there. This is the Mercury Atlas launch facility. Definition: the gantry is structure used to erect and service the vehicle on the launch pad prior to launch, also referred to as a service structure or service tower. B. Launch pad, the base of which the vehicle is erected and launched. C. Flame deflector, the system used to direct the blast of the vehicle engines away from the launch pad. D. Blockhouse, a building serving as the center of control and communication with the vehicle during pre-flight and flight, also known as the Launch Control Center. E. Fuel area, special areas of the safe storage of fuels and oxidizers prior to the transfer to use in the vehicle. Yeah. Launch facility, the combination of all the buildings, structures, equipment, and machinery within the defined area to support a vehicle from pre-launch through launch. To mission. A former home of the Atlas IBM has been assigned to a new responsibility in support of NASA. Complex 14 has become the point of departure for America's first orbiting astronaut. It has been said that a launch facility represents a stage of the vehicle preceding the booster. This ground support equipment is vital to the mission and equally important to assuring successful attainment of the objective. Great description. The overworked word complex, still adequate, describes an area assigned to NASA for the Mercury Atlas launching. Complex 14 on heavy complex row, Cape Canaveral differs a little in appearance from a casual glance to the neighboring launch areas. However, many changes were required to prepare it for the present assignment. A 30-foot extension to the gantry now makes this structure 154 feet high with 14 platforms and intervals within the structure to serve as work areas. The center section of the gantry accommodates a Mercury Atlas vehicle. The gantry is positioned over the launch pad for erecting of the Mercury Atlas. The gantry provides the vertical working space needed, since the Mercury Atlas remains in a fixed position from the erection to liftoff. The gantry is mobile, and prior to launching of the Mercury Atlas, it is moved away from the launch pad. It is interesting to note the unique way this is accomplished. The gantry is moved by wheels onto a turntable. This, in turn, is moved with the gantry on the turntable flatbed to the parking area 500 feet away. The movable structure weighs 400 tons, and the turntable about 100 tons. At the base of the gantry is the two-story launch pad. This concrete building is used as a stand to rest the Mercury Atlas on, and encompasses a system of momentarily hold down the Mercury Atlas after ignition of the engine. A 36-inch water main carrying 175-pound pressure is fed to the flame deflector, which is housed in the pad structure. This is operated during liftoff of the Mercury Atlas to cool the flame deflector and prevent it from melting. Due to the intense heat generated by engine's exhaust, within the pad are spaces assigned to electronic and mechanical devices. These rooms within the pad are connected to the blockhouse by literally miles of electric cable. The blockhouse is situated 750 feet from the launch pad. It is dome-shaped concrete building designed to house and protect equipment and personnel from blasts and shock in the event of the vehicle blow up on the launch pad. The blockhouse is the control center for information and communication to and from the vehicle and spacecraft. Within its confines are the consoles, recorders, and computers to digest the flow of information from the vehicle and spacecraft, and the means to solve problems that may arise during the pre-launch and launch operation. The fuel area consists of large storage tanks above ground for fuel and oxidizer. A system of earthen fields and concrete revestments are used to protect against blast. Provisions are made for lifting the tanks from specially designed tank trucks. The propellants are transferred to the vehicle by pumps through a maze of mono and stainless steel pipes and tubing. The system of flow can be reversed and cause a return to the propellants to the tanks when desired. Propellant transfers can be remotely controlled from the blockhouse. And there you go. There's your fact sheet. Right there. Okay. Now you know what a fact sheet is. If somebody asks you, what's a fact sheet? Well, you can tell them what a fact sheet is. So Gator's got a fact sheet. He'll tell you what it is, what it's all about. Mercury Space. Looks like we read that one. I don't know. I may read it again. Let's see what it says. There's double. There's another one of those. Launch Complex 34. I got one. I just read it to you. Mr. and Mrs. Rebels are both in there, and they each must have got seen there, got out to them. There you go, and see if I read it to you. If I do read it to you again, well, you never can get too much history. Use your mind. I always say use your mind. I know I make a joke out of it, but dementia is not. It's a serious problem in America. And I don't. My information getting delayed, and sometimes I guess you can tell that my mind's working better today. And but all these lights, this is going to cost me a fortune. And I'm sorry. I just show you all the human things about it. And it's just wrong that we can take a person's life. Each and every one of you out there at the sound of my voice is responsible for allowing that hospital to do that to Lisa. Just think about that. Hey, you think that's wrong? Hey, we the people. Okay, you remember me talking about this? This ain't my philosophy. This is a 200-year-old law. It's what everybody, your forefathers, mine, we accepted this. And we accepted it, and it's got a lot of responsibility that goes to that. It does, I assure you. And right now, I'm an American citizen, and I'm telling my other American friends out there, all of y'all, just think about what I'm saying. They're breaking the law up there. I witnessed the crime. And I'm trying to do something about it. I can't do nothing in the hospital. They got all their money and all their lawyers, and they got all the laws on their side. Well, listen, hey, back in the day, you got your brain had to be splattered all over the windshield, and that's what it should be. Anything other than that, 7 days was just not right. What they did to Lisa was just not right, and I promise you, I will spend every breath that I got, every breath that I get. Maybe I'll go away when we get this law out there and get it passed and this bill. Get it out there. Let people see what it's about. You can write me if you want to. Mitchell Aaron Sr., 301 Harbor Valley Road, Toccoa, Georgia, 30577. Write me today. Tell me what's on your mind. I'll tell you what's on mine. Okay, come on back and see me. I got some more skits I want to do with you. If you enjoy history, like I do, well, come on back, okay? And don't forget about Lisa's grandbaby law. If you don't ever think about this, if you don't ever hear or can't come back again, remember, if you're an organ donor, get that off of you. Don't let anybody think it's a bad thing. Look, we got robotics. This is 50, 60 years old, man. They were talking about they got that alloy. They've discovered the alloy that could go in our bodies and not rust or nothing. They made hips and joints, and they can do it all, man. You don't have to steal people's organs and steal her life, and let her, so she couldn't see her grandbabies and all. So something that we trusted in. I trusted instead of I made that decision. I made that fateful decision. Instead of and when she collapsed in my arms, and already had the phone out, and I was calling 911. Well, I couldn't get a signal. I had to put the damn phone out there on the table to get a signal. Can't touch it, and